Hi there. I thought I'd share a short reflection for Christmas Eve. I've chosen just a few of the readings that we're going to be using at Camberwell this evening. We're doing a service of lessons and carols, so it has more readings and it has a lot of songs. But I've just chosen a few of them to use in the reflection. And the first one is from Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 to chapter 2, verse 4. The second reading is from Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1 and verse 5 and 6. And then the gospel reading is from the Gospel of Luke chapter 1, verse 26 to chapter 2, verse 20. So feel free to pause the video and have a read of those and then start the video again. In the reading from Genesis, we heard a bit of one of the creation stories from the Jewish scripture, which has also become part of the Christian scripture. And it talks about the goodness of humanity as custodians of the earth. This is not a story of history or science, but it's a story of legend. It doesn't tell us facts. It tells us about meaning. It tells us about who we are and what our calling is as a species, or at least one vision of that calling. The newly created humans are called by God, the Creator, to care for the earth and its creatures. But in any family, conflict arises as we grow. Children need to differentiate between themselves and their parents, and they need to differentiate from their siblings. This is what happens in adolescence. Within a family, some will not appreciate the decisions that others make. It can lead to hurt. It can lead to a loss of relationship. And that's what happens in this creation legend. God's humans choose a different way of living, and they grow up and they become their own independent selves. This leads to conflict and estrangement between God and humanity. And this leads to pain and violence between human siblings, eventually. And to conflict and violence and war between human nations. And it causes grief for God and humanity. In the reading from Isaiah, we heard a word of hope, of deliverance from this situation. Isaiah talks about it as hope of being delivered from walking in the shadows of adolescence and seeing a bright light. Adolescence is an important stage, but it's not where we want to stay. We want to mature and be able to integrate into the family now as adults, now as our own people. This Jewish prophet Isaiah imagines the arrival of a great leader, a well-balanced and mature adult, a king who will lead the people into stability, justice, and goodness. Christians recognize Jesus as the one that fulfills that hope and actually see Jesus as God coming to join us in our human experience. The idea is that in response to the conflict with humans, God chooses to become a human being as an act of reconciliation, walking in our shoes and seeing what it's like to be one of us. The good news is that by coming to us as a human baby, God has come to join us, and God knows what it's like to be a human like us. And the conflict and separation doesn't need to continue.